sexual assault allegations against the Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein again this morning. Now, in France, they have brought forward proposals for on-the-spot fines for wolf whistling. So, this morning, we are asking, should wolf whistling be banned? To discuss this, we have the women's writer at The Telegraph, Radhika Sangani, and the assistant editor of Spiked, Ella Whelan. They are in our central London studio for us this morning. Good morning to you both. So, wolf whistling, where do we stand on that? Radhika, if somebody wolf whistles at you, what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely hate it. You know, like many women, it's happened to me my whole life. I remember the first time was when I was still wearing primary school uniform. Personally, I often feel really distressed. I absolutely hate it. I feel really uncomfortable. And depending on how severe it is, I can feel really threatened and quite scared.
Ella, what about you? If you were wolf whistled at in the street, do you have a similar reaction to Radhika?
Different strokes for different folks. I tend to roll my eyes or come up with something quick and hopefully witty to say back to the person who's behaving badly. On the topic of banning it, though, I think that makes me feel really nervous, not only because the idea of having a fine to deal with this seems like the completely wrong way to go about enacting social change, but also it just seems completely impractical. How would you do that without, you know, having police on every street corner watching every interaction that a woman has on the road? I think it's a very bad idea.
Well, we have on-the-spot fines, Ella, for using your mobile phone at the wheel, for people who don't pick up after their dogs. Why should this be treated like that? Because Radhika made a really good point there, that it's young girls, underage girls, are sometimes wolf whistled at. That isn't acceptable.
No, it's not acceptable at all. I don't think anyone would argue it's acceptable, but it's the way that we deal with it, which I think is important. So it's first of all important to note that this isn't happening all the time, that society has changed, that we do find it completely socially unacceptable to do these kind of things to women, to be pervy, to make unwanted comments on the street. And while it still happens, I think that the best way to deal with that, in the rare instances that it happens, is for women to stand up for themselves, to feel empowered to take things into their own hands, and for the rest of society to support them. I think once we start asking the authorities and the police to get involved in women's private lives in this and at this level, it really gets my back up, because that's never the answer.
I think what you're saying works really in an ideal world, but to be honest, I feel like so many women like myself aren't able to do that. You know, sometimes I wish I was more confident and able to do that, but I just don't think the onus should always be on the victim to have to speak up. And I do disagree that it's still a rare occurrence. You know, a recent study from End Violence Against Women, they found that 18 to 24-year-olds, out of their 85%, have received unwanted sexual comments on the street, and 45 had received unwanted sexual touching. So it is still a huge problem, and I just don't think that we should expect women to have to stand up for themselves and be the ones to end this problem.
Yeah, Ella, is it less about enforcing this and more about setting a tone to say that this isn't acceptable behaviour? Somebody has to, you know, make some kind of rule that men would maybe think twice about doing it in the street to somebody they don't know.
I think in doing that, you're making two very uncomfortable insinuations. And the first is that women shouldn't be the ones to deal with this. Now, you know, the feminist movement of past, women's liberation movements of past, said that women were strong and capable enough to deal with the bad things that happened in society. They took the onus on themselves to march and protest and change the world, and they did, and that's why we live in a more free and equal society. So the idea that women shouldn't have to deal with this is completely wrong. You know, women and men and everyone else in society has to take onus on themselves to deal with bad behaviour when it comes, and to change bad behaviour and to argue with people. And the second is this idea that we need a rule to make men not behave badly. The majority of men, certainly in this country, certainly in France probably, are not kind of lechers, are not waiting for their opportunity to shout rude things at little girls. It's just completely untrue. I'd be very sceptical about the kind of surveys and the data on this, because it often is, you know, playing into a hyping up of the danger that women get put in, when actually we're in a very good place. More could be done, but the way that we deal with that and the way that we address existing instances of sexism has to be approached very carefully, because this really, I think, is just undermining women's freedom.
Radhika, we are coming at this from a place where we are saying women are upset by this, but that's not the general rule. Some women see it as a compliment.
Of course, and I fully, I've spoken to some women, especially of different generations, who enjoy it sometimes, and that's absolutely fine, but the vast majority of people do feel uncomfortable, I personally think. And secondly, the fact is that we need to accept that everybody's got different opinions on this, and for the people who do feel really threatened and uncomfortable, they should be, we have these measures in place for them. And if what I personally think is a great idea is something like what Nottingham Police Force has done, where they've classified wolf whistling and unwanted sexual comments as a hate crime. So it's no dramatic change to the law, there's no on-the-spot fines, it's nothing so drastic as that, but it's just a simple change in a definition which allows women to report the incident, and it allows police to investigate them and support those women.
Okay, shoe on the other foot. I've just had this tweet in from Liam Summers. He said, so in that case, if the shoe was on the other foot, should hen nights be banned, Ella? Because there's a lot of wolf whistling and a lot more that goes on those, targeting men.
I think I've probably shouted at guys on the street when I was a teenager. Obviously, it's a bit different from a grown man shouting at a young girl. But I think really what this is under, that's a great example of how I think destructive about social relations this is. To have, I think what happened in Nottinghamshire was absolutely scandalous. To have catcalling and wolf whistling classed as a hate crime. You could go to jail for doing that. That's completely dystopian. The whole thing about this is it's inviting the authorities, inviting the police, inviting the state into our personal interactions, when these things can be and should be ironed out between individuals and between members of the public. This is not something for the police. When things get serious, that's when it's something for the police.
Yeah,
I think we're in danger of... I think we're in
in
danger of painting a really patronising view of women here. Radhika has said that, okay, some women like it, but, some women don't. We're inviting the police to get involved in something that some women might not like. That is really dangerous.
I think what we're doing here is sending a message, and this is the big reason why I do think it's important for authorities to get involved and not just sit by and let women.
But is there another way to do it, Radhika, other than criminalising these men? I mean,
I personally do think criminalising is a bit extreme, but what Nottingham's doing is not an actual drastic change in law. It's just
criminalising speech.
It's allowing women to report it, and women need to be able to feel comfortable to report these crimes because it's all part of a wider culture. And if men feel like they can, make comments to women on the street that make them feel threatened and uncomfortable, then that's just suggesting that the next step of sexual assault is acceptable.
Okay, Radhika Sangani and Ella Whelan, the only whistle you're hearing on Sunrise this morning is the final whistle because we have run out of time. Thank you both very much indeed. Keep your thoughts coming in.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.
Now, over in America, Democratic candidate Hillary Clinton is yet again facing some difficult questions over her handling of classified material while she was Secretary of State. With more on that, here's Yanni Chikian.
Polls nationwide show that the majority of Americans do not trust Hillary Clinton, and one of the reasons for it was exposed during the Commander-in-Chief Forum this Wednesday. Lieutenant John Lester told Hillary Clinton that he held the top secret security clearance and had access to highly sensitive information.
Had I communicated this information not following prescribed protocols, I would have been prosecuted and imprisoned. How can you expect those, such as myself, who were and are entrusted with America's most sensitive information, to have any confidence in your leadership as president when you clearly corrupted our national security?
Here's Hillary Clinton's response.
I have a lot of experience dealing with classified material, starting when I was on the Senate Armed Services Committee, going into the 4 years as Secretary of State. Classified material has a header which says top secret, secret, confidential, nothing. And I will repeat this, and this is verified in the report by the Department of Justice. None of the emails sent or received by me had such a header.
This does not quite match what the FBI said. Their investigation revealed that Hillary Clinton had ignored classification markings in her emails. Letter C in parentheses in the body of an email is used to designate a specific paragraph as containing classified information. The FBI notes show when asked if Hillary Clinton knew what C markings meant in her emails, she told the FBI she thought it was to organize messages in alphabetical order. This coming from someone who claims to have had a lot of experience dealing with classified material has surprised many. In one chain of emails from 2011, when Secretary Clinton's aide had trouble sending certain information through secure means, she asked him to, quote, turn into non-paper with no identifying heading, and send non-secure, end quote. Secretary Clinton went on to use a private server to send and receive highly sensitive information. Her team then deleted thousands of emails, and the FBI was unable to recover them. But based on the emails that they did recover, the FBI concluded that Secretary Clinton was extremely careless with classified information, but decided that no reasonable prosecutor would pursue such a case.
Jan Chikian reporting there. Well, former US diplomat Jim Jatras does claim that the FBI is deliberately covering up the Clinton email scandal.
It's, in a word, what we call corruption. What we do know is this, is that Secretary Clinton has engaged in behavior that is criminal, that anybody else would be going to jail for, and she's been lying about it.
There was nothing marked classified on my emails, either sent or received.
Secretary Clinton said she never sent or received any classified information over her private email. Was that true?
Our investigation found that there was classified information sent.
So it was not true.
The FBI is releasing information in this very strange pattern, especially releasing it at times, for example, just before a holiday weekend, when very few people would see it. The FBI is going out of its way to avoid reaching that conclusion, that they, for some reason, whether it's politically motivated or whether FBI Director Comey simply does not want to decide the election on the basis of a law enforcement decision. If she wins, she will be free of these charges, and everybody will know that it doesn't matter, that she has a privilege.
Welcome back. One final point before we go tonight. It takes the most despicable kind of person to sit in the safety of her own home, surrounded by taxpayer-funded Secret Service agents, armed to the gills with firearms, willing to lay down their lives to protect her, to sit there and blame 5 million law-abiding, gun-owning members of the NRA for the mass shooting in Las Vegas. That woman today is Hillary Clinton. You know I'm not the type of broadcaster to hurl ad hominem attacks, and I'm not going to start doing that now. 58 people are dead. Over 500 others are wounded. But I will set the record straight when a politico so singularly obsessed with her own agenda stoops to the level of slandering millions of innocent law-abiding citizens for a gruesome act of mass murder. The crowd fled at the sound of gunshots, Hillary Clinton tweeted. Imagine the deaths if the shooter had a silencer, which the NRA wants to make easier to get. Well, if that isn't just freaking ignorant. Silencers don't actually silence guns. Not even close to silent. Have you ever actually learned about firearms? Because you are incredibly ill-informed, not to mention distasteful and disrespectful to make such an ignorant, politically charged comment at a time like this. Do you not care about the people who die just a little bit more than your own political aspirations? Our grief isn't enough, Hillary continued. We can and must put politics aside, stand up to the NRA, and work together to try to stop this from happening again. First of all, you can't say let's put politics aside and blame the NRA in the same sentence. That is, in and of itself, igniting divisive politics, which of course is what you do best. Second of all, we don't know yet what kind of weapon the attacker used. Speculating that it was a fully automatic weapon is just that. It's purely speculative. And the majority of people who are jumping to that conclusion aren't doing so because they're firearms experts who can identify the sounds of automatic gunfire, making an educated guess. No. They're talking about the weapon because they want to blame the weapon and not the murderer. That being said, it's worth noting that fully automatic weapons are already illegal, as is mass murder. Fully automatic weapons have been illegal since 1986. That's 31 years for you liberals who struggle with logic and math and clearly with history. Let me reiterate. We don't know what kind of weapon the attacker used. What we do know is he was evil, and he plotted and waged mass murder. And 58 people lost their lives because of his brutality and his cowardice and his utter disrespect for the sanctity and value of all human life. If he did use a fully automatic weapon, doesn't this just prove our point anyway? That even if you illegalize guns, bad guys who want to do bad things will get their hands on the guns anyway? Let me remind you again, murder is also illegal. And this man murdered 58 people in cold blood, our fellow countrymen. So let's you and I do what Hillary Clinton will not do. Let's not politicize this for our own gain. That's all I have to say about this topic tonight, because I won't disrespect the victims and their families by using them as pawns for political purposes. Instead, I invite you to pray with me for the victims who lost their lives, the families grieving the loss of their loved ones, the witnesses who escaped with their lives but who will never be the same, and for our nation. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. And that's my final point. You can reach me on Twitter at Liz_Wheeler. If you liked the show, please send me an email at oann.com/contact. In the meantime, catch us here tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern. And until then, have a good night.